After 10 lessons of championing systemed, it's time for some honesty. Systemed is the right answer for roughly 80% of Linux servers and 95% of long-running services. But it's the wrong answer for containers, embedded targets, non-Linux Unix, and ephemeral workloads. This lesson walks through 4 domains where you should reach for something else and builds toward a decision framework so you know exactly when to make that call. Knowing when not to use a tool, that's engineering maturity. Before we get to alternatives, let's give the critics their due. There are 4 complaints about systemed that show up over and over, and they're not tribal noise, they're real trade-offs. Scope creep. Systemed absorbed DNS, networking, time sync, even boot. And that does enlarge the attack surface. It's Linux only, which hurts if you run BSD or Illumos alongside. Journald's binary format breaks decades of grep muscle memory, and PID1 is now big enough that a bug there means a reboot. Steelman these. Engineers who can are the ones whose advocacy actually lands. With the critics steelmanned, here's the framework. 4 questions, top to bottom. Is it Linux? If no, you're on launched, OpenRC, or RC.D inside a container. Reach for tini or dumb-init, something tiny that reaps zombies. Embedded or under 100 megs. BusyBox init or sysvinit. Long-running services? If no, that's FAS or a Kubernetes job. Only when all 4 answers point the same way do you land on systemd. Most servers do. Plenty of workloads don't. Let's zoom in on the container question, because it's the one engineers get wrong most often. A container is one process. Systemed expects to orchestrate dozens. Beyond the philosophical mismatch, you pay for it. 30 megs of image bloat versus Alpine's 5 C-group tug-of-war with the runtime, and a PID1 doing far more than zombie reaping requires. Reach for tini or dumb-init, 250 kilobytes that just reap and forward signals. The exception is LXC system containers running a full OS. Microservice? No. Mini VM, maybe. Now scale the constraint problem down further. On a router or industrial controller with a 16 meg flash image, system's 30 megabytes plus libraries isn't a trade-off. It doesn't fit. BusyBox init runs the whole show in 120 kilobytes. 1 initab, 1 shell script, your app launched in the background. You give up structured journals, C-group orchestration, and dependency-aware parallel boot. On a kiosk that runs 1 binary forever, you weren't using any of that anyway. The rule of thumb, under 100 megs, or RAM is mission critical, systemed is the wrong answer. Now widen the lens past Linux entirely. FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD, Illumos, macOS, these are real Unix, but systemed literally cannot run on them. It's bolted to Linux kernel features like C groups and namespaces. So if your fleet crosses that line, you're maintaining fluency in multiple init systems whether you like it or not. The big 3, BSD's RC.D shell scripts, simple and battle-tested over decades, Apple's launched, which actually predates systemed and arguably inspired it, with cleaner scope and per-service plists. And OpenRC on Gen 2 and Alpine, a modern sysvinit, half a megabyte, parallel capable, and the most credible systemed alternative still shipping on Linux today. Now narrow back inside Linux, because even here there are workloads where systemed is the wrong tool. 3 patterns to recognize. First, ephemeral workloads. Lambda, K8's jobs, actions runners. The platform is already the supervisor. Bolting systemed on top is just dead weight. Second, stateless CLIs like ripgrep or FZF. They're user invoked, they exit, supervision adds nothing. And third, GUI desktop apps. Let GNOME or KDE handle Firefox's lifecycle through a desktop file, not a hand-rolled unit. Step back from the catalog for a moment, because this is the lesson that actually matters. 3 principles. 1, if you can't name where your favorite tool breaks, you don't understand it. You've just memorized its happy path. 2, tribal advocacy loses arguments. Calm, specific trade-offs change minds. Sneering never has. And 3, Your career outlasts every init system. Sysvinit ruled for 20 years. Systemed rules now. Something replaces it by 2040. Engineers who tie their identity to a tool struggle. Engineers who match tools to problems thrive. So here's the cheat sheet that operationalizes those principles. Web server on a Linux VM? Systemed, obviously. Supervision, logs, C groups, all there. Microservice in Docker? Tiny, because you want a minimal PID one that reaps zombies, not a full init suite. Lambda function? Nothing. The platform owns the lifecycle. Print this, pin it near your desk, and by month 3 the matches become reflex. And more importantly, you can articulate the why, which is what earns trust from skeptical colleagues. Reading a framework isn't enough. You have to run it through your hands. So 3 drills, 60 to 90 minutes total. First, audit your own fleet against the 4 questions and find the place you're using systemed reflexively rather than deliberately. Second, build the same hello service 2 ways, systemed on a VM, tiny in a container, and feel the difference in image size, idle memory, and restart time. Third, and this is the hard one, steelman the critique you find least convincing. Spend 30 minutes inside the critic's head and write their case honestly. Juniors know one side. Seniors can argue both. Once you've done the drills, watch for these 5 traps. They catch even senior engineers because they're judgment failures, not technical ones. Don't run systemed inside containers. Tiny exists for a reason. Don't refuse to learn alternatives. 2 hours a quarter on OpenRC, launched, or runit pays back tenfold. Don't migrate to feel modern. Don't over-engineer trivial workloads, and never turn a code review into tribal advocacy. Make trade-off arguments, not identity ones. That's the column to memorize. And that closes the honest stage. You've got the critiques, the decision matrix, the alternatives, and, hopefully, the discipline to argue trade-offs instead of tribes. Lesson 12 is the capstone, synthesizing all 12 lessons into a production-ready senior system practice. The Sorosat ends there. I'll see you at graduation.